it's a very painstaking process as you see the coffins being ushered in here at the amphitheater. So they're really just making sure that they're in keeping with all the, just the rules in terms of really making sure that these heroes and heroines are accorded that much deserved respect. I mean, we're talking about very iconic names here, the likes of Vernon Moodley, a very young man who went into exile in the 60s to join Umkhonto weSizwe, and unfortunately died in a drowning incident in Zambia in 1967. But also a very iconic name as well, Ayanda, that is really associated with art industry in South Africa. If you talk about Todd Majikiza, this was one of the original writers of Drum magazine, and obviously he was also very much quite geared towards the musical composition of songs, and an artist, a very versatile man, and he played a very quite a very instrumental role in terms of the art sector in South Africa. I mean, looking at some of the very iconic works that he was behind, the King Kong lyrics. I mean, this was in 1959, but also he left South Africa in 1960, so the visuals there are under just of the coffins. And kudos to the members of the South African National Defence Force, all the units from the Air Force to the Navy and many others as well. So it's all started with the arrival of the mortal remains here in the capital city on Wednesday. And also it was such a very heart-wrenching moment. I understand the families, they were really coming to terms with the reality of their loved ones. A lot of them, they were saying, look, we had to go to Lusaka to go and see the graves. We had to go to Livingston. But now the closure of making sure that their loved ones really are with them. But also what is very interesting about this particular ceremony, Ayanda, is that you have so many formations. It's not only just former MK members, but also you have the former PAC members as well, who were part of this, fighting against apartheid, something that was not very easy to do. I mean, the conditions in exile, they were utterly unbearable, with a lot of them missing home, and those are some of the dignitaries walking in. In fact, I do understand those are the members of the diplomatic corps accredited here in Pretoria in South Africa. So a lot of them really played quite a very important role for today to be here. As you know, that we do understand that Zimbabwe's ambassador here in South Africa, Mr. Hamad Ziripi, will also have a message of support alongside the Zambian High Commissioner. As you know, that these are two countries really where the mortal remains were exhumed, and obviously there were processes that had to be followed. In fact, when we spoke to Minister Angie Motshekga, she had to break it down that obviously as much as these are our neighbors, but at times the rules when it comes to the treatment of the mortal remains, the rules really vary. So that's why some mortal remains were not able to come through to South Africa, because when they were conducting the verification process, there was no link with South Africa. But of course, something that is quite interesting, and is that there is a very unwavering commitment from South African government to ensure that they go to countries like Angola, they go to countries like Tanzania, where you had quite a significant number of South African exiles, and unfortunately a lot of them really died. So quite a very important moment here at the Freedom Park. As you know, that it's all about honoring these stalwarts really who paid an ultimate price. I'm just going to read some of the names that I have with me, Ayanda, the likes of Machaba, Joseph Zetloho, and he was known as Mr. Frank Nkosi as well. As you know, that with the military, especially under the apartheid regime, a lot of them really given the very hardship that they had to endure, they had to use other names really just to conceal their actual identity. But also you have the likes of Letsolo Edwin Makoti, a former PAC member, a very important member of the PAC, and in fact I do understand he was one of the founding members of the PAC, and in fact we got an opportunity to speak to his family, and they were quite excited about this moment. They were saying they are looking forward to it. But also, I under quite a very significant number of the former Luthuli detachment members here, the likes of Patrick Letlalo from Soweto, and he was operating in Zimbabwe, and he died in 1986. And whenever you talk about Zimbabwe in South Africa, one of the very key instruments that really paved the way for South Africa to have the democratic talks had to be the Harare Declaration. And it was right in Zimbabwe where Oliver Tambo and other mediators met for South Africa to have this democratic dispensation. So I'm going to continue to read some of the names that I have here with me. And also you do have Malana Donald Morane from West Rand in Krugersdorp, and he died in Zambia in 1988. So there's a sense that you get from the families that they were yearning for this particular point to arrive, especially because it wasn't really an easy choice to be part of the struggle. The families really suffered. In fact, I spoke to one particular family, and they were really just highlighting the hardship that they endured purely because of one of their sons was one of the activists based in Soweto. And of course, I under one of quite a prominent name here in my disposal, of course, there to be Duma Nokwe. That's the former ANC Secretary General. That's a very tough time in South Africa. And of course, he went to that all-important school. Whenever you talk about St. Peter's School in Johannesburg, that's where Or Tambo was a teacher, but also quite a number of luminaries. When you talk about South African struggle, they went to that school. So Duma Nokwe really played a pivotal role for South Africa to be free. And this is a man who was a lawyer, he was an educator, and he was a diplomat. I mean, whenever you talk about the ANC International Solidarity, his name always comes up. And it was quite fascinating to see former President Mbeki being part of these proceedings. As you know, that he worked closely as well with Duma Nokwe, and really quite a very incredible career that he had. Unfortunately, he died in Lusaka in 1978 at a very tender age of 50. So quite a number of names that we can really go through and paying homage to these heroes. But I'm going to throw it back to you in studio. I can see that the official proceedings are about to start, and of course the Deputy Minister of Defence, Bantu Holomisa, is of course the program director. So back to you, Ayanda.